podcast. What's going on?
Hi, everybody. It's Lindsay and Krista. Thanks for being here. If you're new to the pod, welcome.
If you're new to the pod, if you're a little blonde filer,
Yeah.
if you're an Ariel fan, stan, welcome. We're happy to have you. We started almost 35 years ago when we were transitioning from our 20s to our 30s. We talk about health, wellness, spirituality, all of the things, and we're so excited about this interview.
Yeah, truly. This has been a kind of a long time in the making.
Yes.
I feel like just because she's so busy and our schedule is a little funky, and it was actually I felt like the perfect timing.
Yeah.
Perfect timing.
Completely agree. It always works out that way.
It always does.
Yeah, I think we had it on maybe a year ago, but yeah, it was such a good one. We'll go into the episode soon, but Lindsay and I were just talking before. I have my wedding coming up.
In 1 month.
In 1 month.
1 month from today.
I would be way further along in my fitness routine than I thought, to be honest. I like to do it close to the wire. I was trying on my dress and I was like, oh, wow, there's been literally no change in my body at all. And I'm just like, okay, we got to just see where we're at, see what we're working with.
Yeah, I'm curious, like, yeah, it's also about not only the day of the wedding, but I can imagine like the leading up to that you're also wanting to really curate in the sense that there's as little stress as possible. Yes, there are going to be things that happen, normal stresses, but like, for example, that moment, like for you to just be like, yeah, okay, this is
whatever, dude.
Yeah, and you look beautiful, but like, I know what you mean. It's just like a very intense kind of like pressure.
I think I just have my whole life said that I want it. You know what I mean? It's like the epitome of all of your eating and body stuff. It's the pinnacle. It's the climax. It's like, yo.
That or the naked issue of.
Oh my God, yeah. We were going to be in a magazine naked, which we still might. That one too. I mean, that was almost, but that's interesting.
I'm joking.
Is that's photos. And I'm like, oh, you could have one good photo and look bomb.
Yes.
But it's just so weird because it's like the programming around your wedding where it's like, you have to look your best. You have to look your best. And you're like, we have so many photos taken of us.
I know.
Like, you know what? I have fucking tons of photos. You know, and it's not even about the photos, but the process actually has been really fun. And I was thinking about this with brides to be, is that I wonder how much of their joy on the day and the week is because they've been taking care of themselves for months. And maybe they've been super stressed, so maybe they haven't been taking care of themselves. But it's been fun to like go through this process because I don't usually have things that I prepare for in this way where I'm like just caring for my body so much and really like watching what I'm eating and, you know, eating to nourish instead of like just kind of going off the rails before making sure I'm getting my steps in. So my process for the next month is I have 2 lymphatic drainage massages at the Tox LA. So the Tox LA is in Los Angeles, and they do lymphatic drainage, which is really, really helpful for just inflammation, bloating, helps getting everything that's stuck, all the toxins that are potentially stuck in your lymph system moving. And so that can be really helpful just for overall body tone and the way that you look anyways. And I haven't done that in a really long time. So I'll do 2 of those. I'm doing Morpheus 8, which is that laser treatment.
Oh, yeah. Every time you say it, I
love
like,
it, Morpheus. You guys, it's called Morpheus 8. So
The
it's
Matrix.
a laser treatment that is on your face, and it basically tightens underneath the skin with lasers. I think I've done a story on it on my Instagram, so you guys can look at that. But I'll be doing that for overall facial tightening, and that will last beyond the wedding. But I've always wanted to try it, and I love lasers. They've just helped me so much. Kim Kardashian's always like, I've only done lasers. I'm like, okay.
Totally.
Okay, bitch. And then I do lasers and I'm like, they are very good. And then Sakara, I do my meals from Sakara, and then Daily Harvest for breakfast. I love their smoothies in the morning, which 2 partners that we work with very closely. And then sleeping a lot, hopefully going to bed most nights at 8 p.m., meditating twice a day instead of 1, because that's just really helpful for your cortisol levels, for stress. I find it to help me just be mentally more clear so that I'm not emotionally eating or emotionally reacting. I'm running more. I used to run quite a bit, and I haven't been running, so I'll be running 2 times a week right now, in addition to strength training and yoga that I'm doing. And then I'm trying to think of other beauty things that I've added to my schedule. Any extra vitamins?
Hair.
Just getting my hair done.
Brows.
I have a microblading appointment.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, a lot of people have been asking me on Instagram about my eyebrows, which I've talked about before, but I have my eyebrows microbladed. I got them done maybe a year ago, and I've had them done twice since. You get touch-ups, and it was one of the best decisions I've ever made.
I'm thinking about it.
It's the best.
Because I have like, it's very sparse on the
Yes.
ends. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It makes them full from root to tip. It looks real.
Mm-hmm.
You can build them in if you want, but it just gives you a brow all the time. And I was nervous that it wouldn't look real or it wouldn't look natural, and they do, and they fade. It is honestly one of the best things I've ever done. I go to Brow Clinic LA if anyone's in LA, but microblading is 100, so I'll have that appointment. And then just nails, and I think the last thing is just really making sure I feel really good and comfortable in all my outfits.
Mm-hmm.
I want to feel really confident about my looks for
Yes.
Cabo. So I've been working with my friend Kate, who has a company called Something White Styling, and she has been helping me pick out outfits for the entire week. So my bathing suits, my rehearsal dinner outfit, and everything like that. And that's really taken a load off of finding like really good outfits that I can feel good in. So I've had those planned for a while because I wanted to try them on. I wanted to make sure it was exactly what I wanted, because for so long I would just kind of be like, whatever, don't
Totally.
care. I'm in a rush.
It's underrated to have outfits planned.
It is.
It takes away so much of the stress of the like overthinking of
Yes.
everything. And oh yeah.
And putting on
I
stuff. That's
love
what I
that.
would do all that. We did even a photo shoot this year, and I didn't try anything on before I put it in. I was like, oh yeah, this is whatever. And I got there and I was like, oh, I don't like how any of this fits. And I don't feel good.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I don't feel good. So I was like, that is my one thing I'm going to do for myself is make sure that I feel confident in each of the outfits, no matter what my body looks like, which it'll be totally fine. Like it's already fine, but it'll just be like, you feel confident, you feel good,
Yeah.
you feel proud. You're like, I was like, for any time I'm going to kind of ball out a little bit and buy some pieces that I fucking love, that I feel proud of, that I feel really good in. But it's been fun.
Yeah. We went shopping the other day and I was like, this is so, I fucking
I spent a lot of money.
I just love, it's just fun. It's like such a girl thing to,
Oh,
just like
totally.
shopping, but it
Shopping's
was
the
just like,
best.
it was fun to like look for you and then try, like go to the dressing room. The whole like cheesy thing you see in
Yes.
Clueless is like fun.
The best. Especially too, I said, I was like, I'm going to buy
Mm-hmm.
a nice clothes.
Yes.
I'm done not buying nice clothes because I
Mhm.
don't shop anymore. And I spent a good amount of money and I feel proud.
Yes.
What is
And
money
things
to
with-
be spent?
Investment pieces are ones like we have to remember, say you're like, hey, I'm kind of done with this eventually, years down the road. You could like still sell it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like it's not going to go to total waste or
Yes.
chuck it like you would a Zara or
Yes.
whatever. So these are like pieces.
Yes, pieces
Mhm.
that I love and that I'll wear. And, I've had really beautiful things over the years that I've invested in, and I do wear the shit out of them,
Yeah.
because they just fit really nicely. So that's what's going on with the wedding.
I
Very
love it.
excited. Justin's
I
like,
can't wait.
what did I say?
What's Justin doing?
Oh my gosh, I know. Kate has been finding him looks too.
Oh, fun.
From Something White Styling. So he's gotten his own little like Cabo looks.
So is he getting a facial?
I was like, there's some blackheads happening. We need to make a facial happening. But honestly, he'll get a tan and that's it, I swear.
Totally.
It's so annoying. It's cute. His wedding ring, he got silver.
Oh,
How hilarious.
Cute.
I was getting it made with a company
Uh-huh.
called Just, Juste.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, isn't that funny?
Uh-huh.
And he's like, I think I want that one. I'm like, silver? I'm like, okay.
Cool.
I'm like, we can't take that wedding photo of our two rings laying on top of each other's shoes.
You can't put it on the kitties' noses.
Yeah, honestly, we can't tie it around our dog's collar to walk down the aisle anymore. It's going to be so embarrassing.
Isn't it? I had a thought the other day. I was like, silver's going to come back.
Completely agree.
Silver's going to come back.
And Tiffany & Co. is ready to fucking rock. They're like, we got you, bitch.
Remember when that was so damn hot? Holy.
Dude, that was so crazy because back then when the Tiffany & Co. Heart bracelets and necklace, it was like, that's how you defined style, was having something that everyone else had,
Yes.
which is the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
So dumb.
I actually didn't have that thing.
You didn't have Tiffany?
I didn't have the Tiffany's silver collar necklace thing.
I did.
You did.
Yeah.
It was
I
like $300.
I think my dad got it for me.
I think it was a huge Christmas present thing.
Yeah.
How much was it?
Yeah, I think it was something like that.
300. Yeah. That's expensive.
That's expensive.
Back
for like a
then?
little kid to be wearing.
That's what's so problematic.
I was like, I don't even know.
Problematic is a dramatic word to
15.
describe, but that's like problematic to me. Where it's like everybody wants it and you're like a family and you're like $300. You're like, oh, but
What is that today for kids on like TikTok or something?
The Frozen outfits are like $160.
What are you talking about?
Disney Frozen. Disney Frozen. Their outfits are like $160. I have a friend who has a kid.
I had a visual of like
Frozen outfits.
like an outfit that's like really crunchy and frozen, like
it's a
Billie
TikTok
Eilish
thing.
would wear.
It's happening on TikTok. Everyone's frozen. They're eating Tide Pods and they're frozen.
Oh gosh.
But I think I'm going to do a full blog post of my or in the episode where I talk about my wedding.
Yes.
I'm going to do like a full breakdown of everything that I did for preparation from like a beauty perspective, from a wellness perspective, from like Justin and I's relationship. And just kind of like break it all down. Not that it's like goals or anything, but I feel like it's actually been really nice.
Oh yeah, no, I think it's so good for people. You know, as they're going through this process, they can feel so lonely.
Yeah.
You know, and it could feel like, am I crazy? Am I, you know? And I think, you know, especially your prep up until the wedding has been I've loved seeing it.
Also too, working with Details Darling. So I worked with a wedding planner called Details Darling. You guys can find them on Instagram, and they've been really, really helpful. So highly recommend, if you can, hiring out help.
Yes.
Also supporting female-founded small businesses.
Yes.
By hiring them to support you in, you know, getting the wedding of your dreams.
Truly.
Okay.
Truly.
I'm excited about this one.
So excited. Arielle Lorre is here. She is the founder of The Blonde Files. She's a blogger of lifestyle, fashion, beauty, wellness, and she's just... You know, her story is one that I knew her story on the surface, but for her to tell us the intricate details of, you know, her sobriety journey and still kind of what she goes through now, it was just really, really fascinating and just really vulnerable of her. I felt like we really went there. And she's just cool. Like, I love like how confident she is, how funny she is, and truly like a girl's girl. You know, you felt that when we met her. So
she brought us bomb cookies.
The best.
You guys, the cookies were unreal.
Can't.
It was crazy to see them on Instagram and be like, those are so delicious. And for me in my head to think I'll never eat those because I would never make them because I'm so lazy. And then I honestly had one. It was a moment. I was like, wow, cookies I've admired are now cookies of mine. And I am enjoying them.
And they are in my kitchen.
We ate like, oh my gosh, you guys, they're so bomb. Her recipes are amazing.
Dude, it was unreal.
And it's interesting, you know, it's just, I love to talk about sobriety because Lindsay and I are both, you know, sober curious. I didn't drink for like 5 years. I wasn't in recovery or anything like that, but it was just a choice that I decided to make. And I think it's a conversation more of our community is exploring about, you know, choosing activities where you're not drinking or being more mindful of your alcohol consumption or trying to cut back. And it's greatly benefited my life. And I know it's different than her journey, which was definitely a disease, which she talks about deeply, but it is a really beautiful thing to be in conversation about.
Yeah, absolutely. And Arielle also has a podcast, which is incredible. It's called The Blonde Files as well. So definitely check that out. You can learn more at theblondefiles.com. Follow her on Instagram. Lots of inspo on there. And thank you, Arielle. We really loved having you.
Yeah, we did. We're also on her podcast, so you guys can listen to us on The Blonde Files. It was a really, really fun one. We did a podcast swap that day, so you can continue the conversation by listening to us together there. And you can find her on Instagram at Arielle Lorre. And if you enjoyed this one, share it with a friend. If you found it to be inspirational, there's definitely another person in your life that needs to hear what we talked about here. And if you'd like, subscribe on Apple Podcasts and then write a kind review. We always appreciate everybody that takes time to do that.
All right. Enjoy this episode. And we have a few announcements on the other side. So enjoy, and we will see you soon. So you're saying like post college or post high school, you had kind of a different trajectory.
Well, I would say the change in my trajectory happened at the end of high school. So that's when I started getting really into drinking and drugs. And I did go to Syracuse for 1 semester. And at that point, I was like very much into my alcoholism and my addiction. And, I talk about this a lot, but alcohol became my solution to life as soon as I started drinking. Like, it was the thing that I never knew that I needed, that I never knew I was looking for. It felt like kind of the missing piece. And it just became my priority. It was like my primary purpose in life was drinking and maintaining some kind of like state of being that wasn't my natural state of being, because it was just intolerable otherwise. And so I dropped out of Syracuse and I moved back home to Rhode Island. I had a boyfriend that we were in a crazy relationship for a long time. He was still there, and that was very toxic as well. And not too long after that, I think I was 19 or 20, I got a DUI. And when I got the DUI, I don't remember if it was the court or my parents, but they said, like, you can either go to rehab or you're going to have to face some consequences. And I was like, rehab? Mm-hmm. And this is Rhode Island in February, freezing cold, dead of winter. And they were like, you can go to rehab in Palm Beach. And I was like, hell yeah.
You're like sexy. You're like Lindsay Lohan's there waiting. It's going to be sick.
I was like, this is amazing. So that was like really where I kind of veered way off the path. And so I went to rehab down there for 30 days. But at the time, like, I was just doing what my friends were doing. I just happened to get caught really in a bad way. I left a party to go to Taco Bell. I was shit-faced. And I did one of those, like, I'm going to the bathroom, and then like get in the car and go. Yes. And I almost ran head on into a cop.
Wow. Whoa.
So it was really bad. And, I had consequences from the beginning with my drinking. It was like, it affected me different than everybody else. And I couldn't figure out why. I was like, maybe I need to just drink wine, or like, maybe I need to only, came up with all these ways to modify it. And still, I was always blackout drunk. I was always waking up in weird places, waking up in the hospital. So I went to that rehab. Sorry, I'm kind of jumping around, and I ended up staying in Florida. And then every few years were just punctuated with another trip to rehab. I would try to get my life together, and I always tried to change my externals. I couldn't look at what was really going on. I couldn't look at the inside. And I thought that if I just went back to school, or if I got the right job or got the right car, it's like all about this facade, that everything else would be fixed. And it wasn't. So
what were you doing for work? Were you working when you were in Florida, or how were you?
Mm-hmm. So, I was having help from my parents at the time, and people ask me this a lot, like what to do if you have somebody who's struggling with addiction, and they look back on what they did and wish that they did things differently, because they really kept me from hitting rock bottom. But at the same time, I was their young, early 20-something daughter living in a different part of the country. They just wanted me to be safe, and they wanted to believe in me, and they did believe in me, and they wanted the best for me. And they really thought, okay, she's going to go to school this time, and she's going to get this, side job. And I would, and then I would drop out after a month, or I would get fired after a few weeks. I just could not hold anything down. My longest job that I had there was a bartender. Dream situation. It was a bar that was owned by a guy who was like one of my best friends. He was a big partier too. There were like no rules, it was encouraged that we drink. It was all our friends that would go there. I could do drugs in the bathroom. That was a big part of my story, because that helped me stay up all night and keep drinking. And ideal situation. And all I had to do was like show up at 6 o'clock at night. And I got fired from that eventually. It was like, but I did have that job for kind of a long time. But I was getting help from my family as well.
What made it like intolerable? You said that, if you weren't drinking, it was just kind of intolerable. What did that feel like, and what was going on?
So, I always felt just really uncomfortable in my skin, but I didn't know it until I drank and I felt comfortable in my skin. And I always say that it was like a spiritual experience, because I remember that first drink so vividly, because it was so profound. I was like, oh, like I could exhale for the first time in my life. And once I had that, not having that was really, really tough. That part was really intolerable. And then as my life kind of unfolded, and I dropped out of school and I couldn't hold down a job, and I was blacking out all the time and ending up in like terrible situations and kind of experiencing these micro traumas and the shame that goes along with alcoholism and addiction. That became intolerable. So it just becomes this cycle that feeds itself.
I think and I'm thinking about when you're talking about like my experience drinking in high school and college, and even when you got your DUI, when you were going to Taco Bell, and it's so interesting, and I don't want to say funny, but I don't know what the word is, that if you would have left the party and been successful and being drunk, going to Taco Bell and getting your Taco Bell in the morning, it would be hilarious. You'd be remember when you said you're going to the bathroom, but you ended up going to Taco Bell, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And it's so funny. And like, I remember drinking and being at parties, whatever. And my favorite part was the mornings where we recollected what we did the last night, because we were sort of making fun of ourselves. But like, what is that about that age or that experience where it's so funny when people are acting so stupid? Like, what about our like psyche or our experience that makes us really interested in talking about people acting inebriated or acting completely like zombies? There's just like this thing that we go through in college and high school where we think that's just hilarious and it's sort of part of the experience. And I can't really figure it out.
I don't know. That's a really good question. And nobody has ever asked me that before. And I don't really know what it is. Yeah, it is kind of glamorized at that age. And
it's like, how far can you go?
Right. But I think also at that age, you really don't have a grasp on consequences, and you kind of feel invincible, and, you just have a totally different perspective than you have as an adult. And you guys know, I'm sure, like, you get to, I don't know how old you are, but 30s, late 20s, 30s, 40s, and you look back on that stuff and it becomes scary almost. Yes. I look back at situations that I got myself in, and I'm like horrified. I'm like, how did I not get like raped and murdered and chopped into a million pieces and put in a briefcase? Like, that's crazy.
And taking drugs, like we would buy drugs at wherever and be like, sure, you're a stranger. Perfect.
Yeah.
Give me something I'm going to ingest.
I think it's hilarious that I will not eat gluten now, but I would snort anything.
100%. 100. That's anything. The biggest fact.
That's the quote for this episode.
That's the most LA shit ever, though, where it's like no gluten, no dairy, but like cocaine from a stranger and like drugs from a stranger. And it's so true. I mean, I was the same for a while when I was when I was living in Chicago. I was doing cocaine. I didn't really like. I've probably done it 20 times in my life, but I really liked MDMA. So I was doing MDMA when I was living in New York and Chicago, probably every weekend for like 2 years. And I was in my phase where I was doing yoga all the time. I was working out all the time. I was eating really well, but I was doing these drugs every weekend. And the concept and the idea is just it's so comical, you know, that we would think that way. But what was your drug of choice, I guess, when you were pairing like alcohol with drugs?
So alcohol was definitely my first love. But as I explained, I had consequences. I was blacking out all the time. So when I was introduced to cocaine again in high school.
Wow. That's early, don't you think?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I went to this private school on the East Coast where there was like a lot of excess and not a lot of parental guidance maybe. And so it seemed pretty common. Now I look back at like 17-year-olds and I'm like, you are a baby. You need to go home.
Like, what I think about that too.
So
I was thinking about when I was in high school, I was a senior. I was like, I pretty much know everything.
Yeah.
I really don't know what else there is to learn about
life.
I could
get married next year.
Yeah,
sure.
totally.
I'm ready to be a mom.
Totally. I'm ready for my life to begin. I pretty much have this whole thing sorted.
Yeah. When I was that age, it was like Jessica Simpson, Newlyweds. And I was like, I'm going to get married at 21 and have babies at 22.
Totally.
Like, that was my life.
That's such a weird thing too about growing up, is that obsession with being a young mom.
Yeah.
I think there's like a glamorized idea of motherhood and being a young mom that we're sort of fed that idea. But just to get back to your story, so what was the point at which you were like, no more? Like you were like, this is essentially my rock bottom. And for people that are listening and kind of thinking like, do I have a problem or not? Because I think With drugs, it seems to be a little bit more clear, I guess, culturally. When people have problems, there's like kind of markers that we all understand. But I think with alcohol, because it's legal, I don't think the markers are as obvious. So what were some things that made you realize that you're like, oh, this is alcoholism?
Well, my story is very extreme because, you know, as I mentioned, like I got involved with drugs very early on, but those drugs had consequences too, because all of a sudden I'm up all night and I need something to come down, and I have anxiety the next day and I need something to manage that anxiety. But then that makes me tired, so that I need to come up. So it was like alcohol, cocaine, Xanax, Adderall. Those were like my four loves. You know, it was like I can't pick a favorite child. Thank you. And what happened was it was progressive. You know, I believe that I have a disease, and I know some people don't agree with that, but I do. And the way that I look at it is that like it's progressive and it's terminal if I don't treat it. And I didn't treat it. And so finally, by the end, I was living alone in an apartment in West Hollywood. My boyfriend had moved out because he said like that ship is sinking and I got to jump off. And he was right. And he left in December of 2013. And from then until I got sober February 22nd, 2014, I was in a blackout. Didn't leave my apartment. I basically would lie in bed, drink. And I guess I was doing drugs. I had drugs in my system, but I don't really remember that. I had a neighbor who was a drug dealer at the time, and he was coming over and giving me drugs, I guess. And I would pass out, come to, drink and do drugs and pass out. I was delirious. I was snorting dust off the ground, thinking that it was drugs. I do remember that vaguely. And my parents called the West Hollywood police because they couldn't get in touch with me, and they did a wellness check, and they came to my apartment, looked through the window, and saw me face down on the floor, unresponsive. And so they had to break through the window, pull me out, take me to the hospital. I somehow got out of the hospital and went back to what I was doing. And
no rehab or anything?
No, I did. So my family finally got on a plane and flew across the country, and they showed up at my door, and I opened the door and I had a grand mal seizure. And I'd been having a lot of seizures at that point. And that's when I went to the hospital, and I was stabilized after a few days, and then I went to treatment. And so for me, it was like very obvious. I have to have no other options in order to be willing to make a change in my life, especially with drugs and alcohol, because like I said before, that was my solution to life. That was my medicine, you know? So it was just so hard to let go of it. And, but I look back on it and I realize I was as much an alcoholic at 20 as I was when I got sober at 28, but I just wasn't ready yet. And that's the thing with like realizing you have a problem or hitting rock bottom. Everybody's bottom is different. You know, I know so many sober people, and some people just feel it emotionally. Some people end up in jail. Some people just can't show up to their job. You know, it's different for everybody. So it's kind of hard to say, but I do know that a lot of people now are kind of reevaluating their relationship with alcohol. I've gotten so many messages in the past year from people who are sober curious or who have just realized all of a sudden all the distractions are gone, and they realize they can't go 2 days without having a glass of wine. And I think that that's kind of a test in and of itself. Like, can you stop for a week? You know, can you stop for a few days? And I think a lot of people are really surprised that they can't. So yeah, it's hard to say because the bottom is different for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, your bottom seems clear to me.
Yeah.
Like it seems very clear. So
I mean, thank God. I mean, I really am. I'm thinking I'm like 2 years of a blackout. Thank God. Like nothing happened. Like, do you think about that kind of on a spiritual level? Because yeah, I'm just like 2 years. That's like unbelievable.
Well, it was 2 months, so December to February, 13 to 14. It's okay.
I know. I
was like 2 years.
I was like, damn. I literally was like, what did your body look like being in bed that long?
Holy!
Oh my God!
All right, Tommy, cut that.
Yeah, honestly,
she's not
2 months,
listening.
okay.
But 2 months is a long time.
I mean,
too.
that is a long time.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's a grand mal seizure?
So it's a seizure, but it's like a very long one. So it's like,
whoa.
I think mine was like 3.5 minutes or something really long. They were surprised that I didn't have brain damage. They had no idea what to expect when I woke up, and I was having a lot of them. And the crazy thing is, years before I got sober, I would have seizures and like come to and keep drinking. I mean, and that's the thing for me, drinking.
Did people see you?
Yeah. You know, a lot of my friends at that point were more interested in partying too, and didn't really have my best interest at heart. But it was really kind of a primal thing. You know, the drinking and the doing drugs was more important to me at a lot of times than eating, sleeping. And it was hard because I didn't want to be doing it. I was like, you know, I'd wake up in the morning and be like, I am not going to drink today. Today is the day. And by 3:00, I'm like, well, I'm just going to go to the store and get a bottle of wine. And then like I have that bottle of wine. And then I'm like, well, I'm just going to have another. And then I'm calling my dealer. And, you know, I just couldn't not do it. And again, that added to kind of the shame spiral. And it's hard though. I think a lot of people look at addiction or alcoholism and think it's a choice. And for sure, it was a choice for me to first ever pick it up. But beyond that, like it was really a survival thing, you know, and I had so many traumas by the end of it, big and small, that it was like my reality and with any kind of clarity was just to go back to the beginning, intolerable. I had to numb it with something.
What made sobriety stick this last time, and like what does your support system look like?
So I was definitely ready. I went to a lot of good rehabs along the way, and somebody, actually Lauren, asked me yesterday on the Skinny Confidential, like, what was it about the last one? Was it better? And it was just that I was done. I knew when I kind of came to in that hospital that I was done, and that if I drank again, I would die. And I didn't know what sobriety would look like, but I was willing to not do it my way for once. And so I was in rehab for 3 months in Utah, and Mary-Kate and Lindsay went there. They weren't there when I was there, but that's why I chose it. Perfect. I was like, still kind
One stipulation.
Yeah, you have your little boots packed. You're like, I'm ready.
It's so funny. I think back to it, and my family came to the hospital, and they're like, you have 3 choices for rehab. You can go to Promises in Malibu, and I was like, I don't want to be in LA. You can go to this place in Arizona where I'd already been. And they were like, or you can go to Cirque in Utah. And I was like, I think that's where Lindsay went. And I was like, that's my idol. So that's where I went. So I was there for 3 months. I came back to California and I did another 3 months at like kind of an extended treatment. And then I was in sober living for 6 months. So my first year of sobriety, I was in kind of a sober environment with a lot of support, and I was really fortunate to have that.
What's sober living?
Sober living, they have them all over the place in California and in other states too now, but it's kind of like where I was living, it was a house off Montana Avenue in Santa Monica with like 10 bedrooms, and it's a bunch of women living there who are trying to get sober.
Cool.
And they have kind of support staff, and they take you to meetings and help you get a job and just kind of help support you as you get your life back together. And so I did that, and it was kind of like a safety net. I knew at that point that I wanted to be sober. And even in the beginning of sobriety, I was like astonished by the fact that I could like go to the grocery store without drinking a bottle of wine first. And I got a new car. I mean, when I got sober, I had nothing, no car, no apartment. And I remember getting my first car in sobriety and having like valid registration. And I was like, whoa, this is crazy. And like having a valid, insurance and license and all of that. And I got a foundation here in LA. There's a lot of sobriety here. I think that we kind of have an advantage because it's so health conscious here too, that like there's such an emphasis on like living clean and spirituality and all of that. And, so I found my people, and that was really important. And then a couple years into it, I got super into meditation. That changed my life so profoundly. I got in a relationship with my husband. He's sober. That really kind of enhanced my sobriety and my spiritual life and all of that. And I just get further and further away from that girl, and I have so much compassion for her, you know, but it's like I feel like I got a second chance at life, and it's just crazy. And you know what I just realized as I'm sitting here looking at you? I remember when you were a Soul Cycle instructor in Santa Monica.
Hell yes.
I used to go on Sundays with my girlfriends because we loved you. And I remember going on like my 1 year sober anniversary.
Oh my God.
We were like, let's do a ride in Lindsay's class. And we went, and I think I came up to you after, and I was like, I'm a year sober. Thank you.
Oh my God.
Shut up.
Yeah. So it's very,
That's
I'm like, I
crazy.
have chills like sitting here
Wow.
because I just had that memory.
Wow.
Yeah.
How many years is it now?
Wow.
7.
What a good way to celebrate it, Soul. Wow, that was 6 years ago?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, you're old, Lindsay.
Wow.
This is
That's
something
cool.
that I want to ask from like a non-judgmental perspective, but like a curiosity perspective, because I'm trying to figure out the correlation between like having access to a lot of money and like addiction. And so it's like interesting because your access to money prolonged your addiction because it enabled you in a way to get drugs and drink and live in Florida and live these places, but then it also helps you in your recovery, you know, because you're able to go to these places. What do you think that like tie is of access? And, you know, a lot of people at the private school were also doing drugs too. And how was that? Like, how have you thought about that? Does it, you seen it as something as beneficial to you or that has been harmful?
I think it's really what you do with it. I definitely grew up with people that had access and had excess and never got involved in drugs. And, you know, I think that also with the alcoholism and addiction, there is a genetic component to it, although nobody in my family has it. But I just feel for whatever reason, I'm just a really sensitive person and an anxious person. And so, you know, I was just kind of ripe for that. And I don't know that it had so much to do with the environment, although it did make it a lot easier, you know, to have access to everything. And then with getting sober, you know, I was so lucky to go to these treatment centers, but you can also get sober for free. And finding a recovery community, you know, I try to adhere to the traditions and not talk about it on like a public level, but there are groups that are so amazing, and I know so many people who got sober without going to treatment. And money can really help, and it can also really harm you. I mean, people love to say to me online, like, "Oh, well, it's so easy for you to get sober because like you know, your husband," and I'm like, first of all, I got sober before him, but I do know that I was privileged, and you know, and my parents were willing to pay. But I'm like, if money could cure alcoholism, I mean, look at all these people who are wealthy and die from it. So I think it's really, like it's really what you do with it.
What about, so you mentioned meditation. What were like some of the foundational practices that you started to implement in order to support you through this? And what about them kind of like opened you up on a more spiritual level?
So again, kind of finding that community, and well, you can cut this part, right? But like AA, I just don't like to say it on a public level. So I'm trying to think of how to phrase it without like saying upfront.
Yeah, maybe just having having a supportive community where you can show up honestly.
Yeah.
And if you don't, we can not answer this one too.
No, that's good. Yeah, like finding a community of like-minded people who have been through the same thing, where you have that camaraderie. I think so much of my addiction was like hiding behind this facade, and I kept adding layers to it. The more shame that piled up, the more I had to hide. And that is really suffocating. And so when I got sober, it was so important to find people who I could just share openly with and let that shame go, you know, because that's what really feeds the cycle of addiction and alcoholism. So that was like first and foremost huge. And getting in touch with a spiritual, I don't know what to call it, just a spiritual side of myself. You know, I never had anything that anchored me. I didn't grow up religious. I was the center of my universe, and I relied on myself, and I kept failing myself. And so it was so hard to find any kind of peace and security. And so, you know, I had to find something to anchor me, and I found that through meditation. But it took me a few years of like doing all kinds of different apps and this and that, and then I finally landed on TM, Transcendental Meditation, which I feel like whenever I talk about it, their eyes glaze over, like, oh, okay. But it was so profound for me.
I feel like that too with meditation. Like they're like, what's your biggest hack? I'm like, meditation. I know you don't want to hear it, but like, cause it's like, it feels like old.
Yeah.
It feels like drink water.
Yeah.
You know, like
totally
rest. Like it feels very unsexy, and you want to always have like the sexy new thing, or the thing that people can buy, or the thing that's like 2021 or interesting, but it really is. It's like, it's the most profoundly transformational thing. And you finding that spirituality and finding that purpose, you know, is huge too, because, and I'm even stepping more into that of realizing that it's not me, that this isn't, I don't need to pull on myself always for strength or for guidance or for hope or for direction or whatever. That there is something bigger that I can lean on, and that there is like strength I can garner from God or from source. And to know that is so like such a relief, you know, and meditation is, I think, such a beautiful gateway to spirituality, because you finally can hear yourself and you finally can separate yourself from your programming, from your identity, from everyone else. And before I was meditating, it was like, I was having so many problems with anxiety and loop thoughts. It was like I couldn't catch myself. Like I couldn't catch them, and I couldn't slow them down. And I felt like I was a prisoner. I was like, oh, I'm a prisoner inside my mind, and I'm a prisoner in this life. And when I was able to finally like peel back and like slow that down, it's like, oh, that's where I am. I'm underneath all of that. And meditation has been so beautiful for that. For your spiritual practice then with meditation, like what else do you consider part of spirituality for you?
So you mentioned like God or a source. I have a God of my understanding, right? So it changes and it evolves, but yeah, I had to really find something else that was my source. And I love that you said that, because I have friends who are sober who always remind me, like, Chuck, my husband, he's not your source. You know, my bank account is not my source. My job is not my source. My friendships, my family, like there has to be something else, because these things are all changing, right? And they can go away one day, and then what? So that was like the biggest thing. And yeah, I loved what you said about meditation, because it just helped me to see things really clearly and to feel that connection really clearly. I like how people say like prayer is the asking and meditation is the answering. So even though my concept of like my God is changing all the time, I still will like pray in the morning. I do some readings. I do some journaling, and then I'll meditate once like everything in my brain is kind of out. And when I meditate, I can kind of feel that like power coming in, if that makes sense.
Totally.
Yeah.
You feel yourself. It's like, oh, it's happening.
And then I do another meditation in the afternoon, because that's how TM is. It's twice a day. And that one is like crazy.
Really?
It's like a natural drug.
Yes.
It's like my natural Xanax. It's crazy. Yeah. And I always feel really connected in that one. So
When you met Chuck, I'm just curious, like, did you have any anxiety around being in a relationship after all that you've been through?
no, I really felt ready. I had been in a relationship. I mentioned the guy that I was with before I got sober. He moved out, and then when I got to rehab, of course, we got back together.
As you do. Well, one drug's gone, but can't lose them all.
I was like, ooh, I can't feel feelings. Like, no, I need something. And we ended up staying together for my first year. And then, I don't know, I don't want this to come across the wrong way, but you know, water seeks its own level. And at a year sobriety, like, I was in a different place than him. And so we ended up breaking up, and then I stayed single for, I guess, a year. Yeah. It's hard to remember the timeline. And at that point, you know, I just did so much work on myself and lots of therapy, and I really came to just love being alone. I love my husband, but I miss it sometimes.
Oh, totally.
I'm like such an independent person. I'm like,
Totally.
oh, I miss having like an apartment where I could just go home and like nobody's there.
Totally. I know. Just whenever he has like stuff with his friends, he's like, "Is that okay?" I'm like, "It's okay. It's really more than okay."
My husband's like, I'm gonna go golfing today. I'm like, yes.
Honestly, totally. I'm like, take your time. Do you want my car?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah, so I really came to like love that time. And then I just felt like I was ready, you know, and I did the app thing a little bit. And that was interesting, being like 30 years old in LA, sober, trying to date a bunch of fuckboys on like Bumble. And it was kind of fun. There were a couple fun ones, but my husband and I had known each other for a while because he's sober too. And so we knew each other through like mutual friends, and we would see each other around. And, you know, it was weird. I had to go to therapy and be like, do I have a daddy issue? Like, what is going on? Because he's twice my age, but I just felt like there was some kind of pull there. And I
Wait, that's fascinating. What it was like? What was discovered in therapy?
She basically was like, no, I don't think you have a daddy issue. But I just, I think there is a part of me, and I think there's a part of everyone who wants security.
For sure.
And I've always been attracted to older men for that reason. Not twice my age older, but, you know, men kind of mature at a different rate than women, I think. And I like a guy, you know, 10 years older. But there's something about Chuck, the way he carries himself, which I'm sure comes from experience and age and, you know, his position in life. He's just very confident, but he's like gentle, and he's so wise. I mean, I feel like I have a husband and a mentor, you know. I'm just like, give me advice, tell me what to do. So I decided to make a move, and that was it.
Wow.
So you made a move on him.
I made a move on him.
What did that look like?
That's why I said I listened to your episode of you guys together, and he was like, she was very, very assertive. It was sweet. He was like very flattered by it. It was sweet.
He's very like shy, and he was like, why are you interested in me? What is this? So, you know, I was ready at that point, and I just kind of had this attitude of like, what's the worst that can happen? And I still have that attitude now, like kind of fearless. I mean, I deal with anxiety and fear daily, but I really try to like turn it over to the universe and just work through it. And I was like, I'm 30 years old. Like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? He's going to say no. And like, then I move on. Fine. Big deal. And we would normally see each other a few times a week, same nights. And so I decided I was going to make the move, and I wrote my number down on the back of like a valet ticket. And I was like, I'm going to see him tonight. And I went, and I didn't see him. And then I was like, well, I'm going to see him on Wednesday. And I went, and I didn't see him. And for like a month or two, every time that I thought I was going to see him, he was not there. And
you're like, I cannot get ready this much.
Yeah.
I cannot be getting ready for 2 months
it's like,
straight.
Oh, excited, and then like let down. Yes. But it's great because he always says like the timing was perfect. He was like, if it had happened at any other time, like I wouldn't have been ready, and I wouldn't have been willing to jump in. And this is actually kind of interesting too. He said the day of the night that I gave him my number, he was driving, he was like leaving work or something, and he was behind a truck, and the truck was all white, and it just said Ariel in it. Just like crazy.
Out.
So when I gave him my number, and he is like not woo woo, he's like, I don't even want to tell you this because you're going to go analyze it. But, but then I gave him my number, and he was like, what? It was just so weird.
Wow.
Yeah.
How do you deal with, because of the age gap and because of his position in Hollywood and everything like that? Like, how do you deal with, do you get a lot of comments? Like, has there been a process for you of feeling like where you don't feel like you need to explain yourself and your life and you don't need to prove anything to anyone?
Yeah. You know, from the beginning, we were both a little bit trepidatious initially, him more so than me.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know, actually. I think he just cares more about what it looks like. He didn't want to look like the creepy older guy, whereas I was like, I don't care. If I look like a trophy wife, whatever.
Literally.
But we both were kind of just like, people are going to talk. big deal. Who cares? You know, neither of us are going to let what other people think dictate our lives. And that's really how I felt. I was like, I don't really care what people say. I would rather, I don't know, I would rather look back and be like, yeah, I did something crazy. I took a risk. I followed my heart, you know, than to not do something because of other people's opinions. And he's very private. I kept him off my Instagram for the first couple of years that we were together. I still maybe have only posted him like twice. Like I don't put him on there. But it wasn't because of judgment. I just was trying to respect his privacy. But when I finally like revealed him, I didn't really get any comments. I did get a lot of backlash one day when Fox News ran some article about him. And they were like, by the way, he's married to this 31-year-old at the time Instagram influencer, and here's her Instagram. And they linked everything. And so it was just like dangling red meat. And that day was so hard because it was the first time that I've experienced that kind of like just the most vile, hateful things you could ever imagine people writing. So that was really difficult. But I also knew like, well, these people are just looking for someone 100%. To be angry at. And
also like stuff like that, like what's the point? Like how does this is the whole thing that the media does. It's like we have this person that we want to paint a narrative about, and we want to paint this narrative about them that means they are X, Y, and Z. And
it's almost like they work backwards.
Yes, it's like, how else can we do that? Oh, we believe that having a young wife that looks this way, and like, you know, most people in America, like they wish they could have this situation or whatever. And it's like, that has nothing to do with anything that would be relevant to that story, and it's absolutely ridiculous. Like, could you guys ever do legal things, or like you just whatever?
I mean, I went to Chuck and I was like, I can't believe this, and I was like texting the Warner Brothers publicity guy, like, we're having a PR nightmare, and he's like, not my publicist. And everybody was like, okay, it'll go away tomorrow, like next news cycle. It's like not a big deal. Which is kind of hard. It's a little bit invalidating because you feel like they're just coming for you, and it felt very personal. But it's just so reductive, you know. And I get it. I mean, I get that it looks different. We're not used to seeing it necessarily. And sometimes I'll see like an older guy and a much younger girl, and I'll have like a kind of a reflex judgment. But we kind of laugh about it. I mean, if you listen to the podcast, I was like, people think I'm your trophy wife. He's like, you are. Like, we're in on the joke, you know? We're like, okay, next. I mean, it's such low-hanging fruit.
Totally. It truly is.
Totally.
Did you have to have, like, a conversation with your family? Or were they, like, cool? Like, what was that conversation like? They were worried.
Oh, wow. They were initially very worried. They were worried that he was going to hurt me. You know, they saw a power dynamic, I think, in their minds. And that's another interesting thing. I think people are like, well, he's so like powerful and whatever. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm young and I feel like I have more power sometimes.
You're like, look at
in
my
the
dynamic
compared to this. I mean, it's just different, but I never at any point felt like, well, I'm submissive to him and he's so powerful. Oh my God. But you know, I think my family was worried that he was some kind of predator and that he was more powerful than me and that I was going to get hurt. And I was still only a couple years sober. And so they were still nervous, like that I was fragile, even though I wasn't. So yeah, so they were nervous. My dad came out to visit me when we were actually my mom came out to visit alone, and I introduced her to him. And of course they're like same generation, and he's so smart and so charismatic. And so she just fell in love with him instantly. And she was like, oh, when you see you together, it's not weird. And so she co-signed. And then my dad came out, and my dad and him are like, they have a bromance. It's very sweet. So
that's sweet.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's so funny how society will like, we look at people and we're like, oh, what do you do? And then we just label people as what they do. And then we kind of then assess, okay, how powerful are you because of what you do? And, you know, no one is inside of your home in the day-to-day, in the relational dynamic, and seeing like how, for example, sensitive Chuck might be and how like powerful and assertive you might be. You know, it's just like, that's what's so interesting about especially Hollywood and or now, you know, social media and influencers are more of the modern day celebrity, and just making those assumptions based on what we see. So yeah, I can just imagine that can be hard. Do you guys have like check-ins? Like do you have any things that you do on a regular basis to kind of maintain the health of your relationship?
Yeah, so it's a little challenging right now, you know, being together 24/7. He's used to a certain momentum and a certain he just has this drive, you know, and he's still right now he has 7 shows on TV, but he's doing it all from home. But initially it was really hard for him. It was hard for him to like be home and not be going to work and not be around that energy. And you know, there have been points in quarantine where we're like roommates, you know, and then we have to come together and be like, hey, you know, we need to like work on us and make time for us. And so we'll do things like do a weekly check-in on Sunday, because we're both the type of people who can kind of get immersed in our work and just sweep things under the rug. And then before you know it, 6 months later, it's like, you know, I'll say, you didn't load the dishwasher, and it turns into like this enormous thing. So we just try to kind of hash things out, be open, communicate with one another a lot, and do check-ins. And also, what was the other thing I was going to add? Yeah, that's
do you do therapy together?
No.
Yeah. Right. Cool.
I was talking about this with my fiance Justin about like the idea of when we're home, it's like the difference between like true peace and like peace. It's like we can be home working and we're each doing our own thing, but if there's like beef that we have with each other, it's like peaceful, but it's not like true peace. And how so often it's like having the conversation about like who's going to do dishwasher for the month or for the week, or who's going to do this, who's going to do that. And just like having that clarity of conversation and understanding in the relationship provides people, although it's uncomfortable at that time, that sense of true peace. And that true peace is so different than like being quiet or kind of just being in your own space. And it's something that like, it's not easy, but it's always so much better to seek that than just seeking like sweeping stuff under the rug, because most people have everything under the rug. I want to talk about body stuff, body and eating and diet, because I love when you speak about that. That's sort of what I connect to you most on and what I find to be most helpful and relevant. And I really related to a lot of your parts of your story. And I wanted to talk about, you know, I've heard you talk a lot about you were doing a program and it was really focused on like the before and after photos. And there was this situation where you had was it the before and after shared?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then it was really that chase and that focus on that. So can you tell us a little bit about, you know, your journey with your body and nutrition over the years and what that was like?
Yeah. So it started because I wanted abs. That's it. You know, I was a couple years sober. I've always been petite, but I never, at that point, I hadn't been working out, and I had gone from being really emaciated to, you know, eating normally and stuff. And I just didn't feel comfortable in my body. It's kind of like I went from one end of the spectrum to the other. And this is in 2016, I guess. This is when I started my Instagram account, which then was the launching board for everything else. And that's when BBG was really big. And it is still big, but at the time, Instagram was different. Social media was different. You know, you could hashtag BBG and get 5,000 followers off of that, you know, that kind of thing.
Today. Damn.
Yeah. Good idea.
Selfie, and I'm like, BBG girls.
But with the program, you were encouraged to track your progress and to take before and afters. And, you know, this is another thing. This is a whole other conversation. But those before and afters, still, the algorithm loves it.
Yes.
I archived all of mine because I was like, I don't even want to have that on my feed anymore. It's not what I'm about. I don't want to be comparing myself to myself, and I don't want other people to be comparing themselves to me, especially when I was, you know, at unhealthy points in that journey. But it's crazy. I'm like, you put a side by side, and Instagram is like, oh,
100%.
Go viral.
We always say that with reels. It's always reels
Yeah.
of selfie face reels.
Yeah.
And if you notice, like on your Explore page, I always talk to Justin about this, about like algorithm and AI and how they can really tell if someone's like attractive or not via AI. Also with likes and stuff like that, but it's on TikTok as well. Because if you look at your feed, it's like these are all by standard beauty attractive. And how does that just happen? Because there's a lot of people taking selfies all the time. Anyways.
Well, I think that there was a big scandal with TikTok that hasn't really been getting a lot of traction, but that they have worked it into the algorithm that they prefer a certain body type, you know, super thin. They prefer, like, I think they were saying it's racist. Like, they don't want fat people. They don't want people of color. Wow. They don't want people with disabilities. They said there was some kind of internal memo, I think, that said like they think it looks messy. Wow. So yeah. So yes, that's a whole other thing. But yeah, so I was doing BBG. I didn't know really what wellness was. I didn't know what health looked like. I thought that it just meant having abs and like being in shape and having this kind of after body. And so I pursued that, but I did it all wrong. At least it was wrong for me. And I was very restrictive. And of course, restricting leads, at least for me, to binging. And so I was all over the place. And finally, again, I had to kind of hit a rock bottom with that, where, you know, I had been counting calories, tracking macros for years. I was doing these really hard workouts. I was restricting a lot of food groups, and I look at pictures now, and I was a rail, but at the time, that's not how I experienced it. At the time, I was like, okay, I'm going to cut my macros more because I'm going to get this spot in my arms that I don't like. And it's like the goalpost keeps moving, and it's never enough, ever. And I was so miserable because I was obsessing over food and exercise. That was like, it consumed my mind. And so I hit a rock bottom with that. And I had gut issues, and I like wasn't getting my period, and I had no energy. I was fatigued all the time, and I really had to slow down. And actually, I kind of stopped working out for maybe like 6 months. I would go on walks and stuff, but my body just could not handle it. And I had to reevaluate my entire relationship with exercise and with food, and learn how to be gentler with myself and learn how to be intuitive, which took years. Intuitive eating is such a trendy thing right now, but it's like there's no quick fix, you know, and it was a lot of trial and error for me. And meditation played a huge role in that. Not to go back onto that topic again, but it really taught me to get in touch with myself and to hear my body's cues and to tune into my energy. And yeah, it's like I did a total 180. I had been trying to stuff my body into this mold, and somebody said to me, maybe what you think you should look like and what your body wants to look like at its healthiest are two different things. And I was like, what? You know, like it never dawned on me. And that really changed everything for me.
There's so many like trends, diets, workouts, body types coming at us every single day. Like we're in our 30s, but like I think about kids seeing that and like just dissecting their own bodies. And I remember myself, we talk about it a lot, like in our teens and 20s, like doing the freaking master cleanse and special K diet or whatever. So yeah, I mean, it continues to be, even in my 30s, like, you know, I have a much deeper appreciation for my body now. But the information's still coming, and it's hard some days. Like if you catch me on a low day, I might go down a rabbit hole of like, well, maybe I should do this, or, you know, but the slowing down, I experienced last year, just not being able to work out in the group fitness classes, quitting Soul Cycle, and just being on the other side of like just intense activity every single day, all day. And yeah, I finally could hear exactly what my body needed, and it was very different from what I was doing to it. How do you know, being someone who is on social media and has such a big following, and I'm sure getting a lot of questions about health, wellness, everything in between, like how do you just kind of manage like your own evolution in the public eye? Because I think for me and both of us, like, it changes. What we're interested in, what works for us can change. So has it been hard to do that? And how do you kind of manage that relationship with your following?
I think, my social media, it's always been about my evolution from the beginning. It was like, even though it started as a fitness account, it was my evolution trying to get healthy, and my evolution as a woman in sobriety, and my evolution from a single person to somebody who's married, and my evolution as a businesswoman, all these different things. And, I really connect with like fallibility. I love seeing people's mistakes, and I love to see people learn from adversity and change. And so, I've kind of built my brand, I guess, on that. And I don't want to be anything other than authentic. I did that for so many years that I just can't do it. I have to honor myself. And I think my followers, I have a lot of people that followed me early on, and they'll send me messages like, I just want to say I followed you during the BBG days, and it's been so cool to see how you've evolved. So I think they appreciate that. And people don't want to see perfection anymore, and people don't want to see people who, I don't know, pretend that they have it all together. And so I've always tried to just convey, that like I am imperfect. I make mistakes all the time. What works for me 6 months ago doesn't work for me now. And there's so much information saturation in the wellness world. And, I really try to impart on other people that, like, we're always changing. There's bio-individuality. Really try to tune into yourselves and figure out what works for you, because I did that thing before where I was trying to just do what other influencers were doing and do someone else's diet and do someone else's workout. And kind of to your point, Lindsay, it's hard when if you're scrolling Instagram and you see like some perfect picture, you naturally want to know what they're doing. But it really just was kind of like a futile pursuit for me.
Yeah. With diet, nutrition, and diets, it's interesting. I was thinking about intuitive eating, and I'm like, I think it's obviously the best thing for people, but I just sometimes am like, it's not that easy, and it's actually not that easy for myself, and I know it's not that easy for other people, because it's like, if you tell someone, hey, just eat intuitively, people are like, what do you mean? Like, how? Like, I have a connection to my intuition, but my connection to my body is not as clear. And I think for so many people, it's actually really hard to eat intuitively, because food and your emotional state and everything that's going on in your relationship to food is so much greater than just like, hey, eat this, eat that. So what has been your like emotional and spiritual relationship with food, and what have you uncovered through your process?
I'm definitely a stress eater. I like to obviously stuff my emotions, numb out my emotions. And I did that for so many years, when I was really into binge eating, because I would get home at the end of the day and, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock rolls around and it's just me, and uncomfortable things come up. And so I really managed that with food for a long time, until I got to the point where I was so sick of feeling like shit and sick of my own shit that I wanted to make a change. I hit a rock bottom with that. But the intuitive eating aspect is really tough. And I have people ask me all the time, like, well, my body intuitively wants to eat the whole bag of chips or the whole sleeve of Oreos or whatever it is. And there are so many different components to that. But what helped me most, again, is like slowing down around eating. I mean, I think so many of us eat with our phones, eat in front of our computers, eat in front of our TVs, eat in our car. We're distracted all the time. It's so hard to just be. And I worked with a nutritionist when I was trying to figure out some gut issues and clean up my diet a little bit. And he recommended that I chew my food. And I was like, excuse me? Like, hello, I chew my food. And of course, I was chewing twice and swallowing and just inhaling food. And like, we're so distracted that how can we possibly know what we need and know when we're satisfied and when we're not, if we're not turning off the noise, you know? So that was a big part of it. Evelyn Tribole, do you know who she is? Mm-mm. She's like the godmother of intuitive eating. She actually started intuitive eating 25 years ago. Wow. And I just had her on my podcast, but she has like 10 different principles. And one of her principles is eating for satisfaction. And I was like, oh, it's not eating till I'm full, because sometimes I don't know what full is. It's not eating before I get full. You know, it's like just this concept, like, okay, eat until I'm satisfied. And if I can turn off all the noise, and sometimes obviously I'm like listening to a podcast or whatever, life happens. But I can recognize when I'm satisfied and when I'm slowing down, when I'm taking time in the morning to do my meditation and to ground myself and do the things that I know help me so that I'm in my body. Otherwise, I'm like fight or flight all day, because we can just pick up our phone the second we wake up and start running and get the emails and da-da-da. And like, of course, we're not going to feel anything. So I make sure that I'm doing all these other foundational things so that when it comes to the eating part, I can recognize like my cues.
Yeah, I think even just like asking, when you said intuitively and being able to slow down, even just that moment, like to ask yourself, how do I feel? What do I need? You know, and even if you are busy, it's just like that one moment that is, that can be, you know, make such a difference.
It's like mindfulness.
Yes,
you know? And
exactly.
there are a lot of experts, addiction experts, who talk about this and talk about our addiction to food and our addiction to just anything we can get our hands on now. And a lot of them say, you know, it really comes down to mindfulness, and mindfulness is awareness, and awareness is being present, and being present is quieting the noise as much as you can, and being in your body as much as you can. So whatever you have to do to achieve that, I think is helpful.
Yeah. Last question from me. I just found it really liberating, cool that you've been so public about, you know, any work that you've had on your body. And, you know, we live in LA, so I'm just like, okay, cool. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't shock me or make me feel any way. I really believe in people doing what's best for them and what they want to do. But I'm curious kind of like your journey with that, and, you know, anything that you've learned in getting that type of work done, and how to also balance with just like loving your body too.
Yeah. It's a complicated question. I get this a lot. How can you love yourself and also change yourself? For me, it was pretty deep. I mean, when I got sober, I had been living really hard for a decade, you know, staying up for 2 days, smoking a pack a day for 10 years.
Wow.
Never washed my face unless I took a shower. I baked myself in the sun with like oil on my face. You know, I was like, it was a hard 28.
Wow. Wow. I love it.
Yeah. And so a few years into sobriety, you know, and people ask like, what did you look like before? I'm like, well, I wasn't a monster. You know, I like started taking care of myself and like wearing sunscreen and drinking water and like sleeping. And, you know, I was a cute girl, whatever. But, I felt like there were just things that I wanted to look as good as I felt on the inside. I think that was a big part of it. One of the first things I did was my nose, and that I had wanted to do since I was like 12. I remember begging my parents for a nose job, which is another conversation in of itself. But I just, you know, I was always a little bit insecure about it. So that was that was the first procedure that I did. And then a couple years later, I had hooded eyes, and after I turned 30, like Botox just wasn't picking them up, and people would always ask me if I was tired, and people would be like, "Oh, are you okay? What's wrong?" Because I just kind of had this like downturn, and I didn't do it because of other people, but that was kind of the thing that I was like, well, if I can change this, you know, and improve a little bit, then I will. And so then I did a brow lift. But I think if anything, you know, it doesn't change how you feel inside. But if anything, it was empowering, you know, because I was like, I can do this. Like, and it is LA, you know, it's always, I always say it's like getting your hair done here. It's just not shocking at all. It's not a big deal. And I think for other people, this having surgery would be a big deal. So there's a little bit of a bias for sure. But yeah, if anything, I was like, all right, I look like myself when I was 20, you know, like before I started going down that road. And I think there is kind of an aspect that's like, you look good, you feel good. So it kind of goes both ways.
Love that.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
What's your favorite thing you've ever done? Like beauty wise? It could even be lasers, facials, anything.
I mean, the brow lift was really
I think
life-changing.
it's in my genetics, so it's probably gonna happen.
Hooded
one day.
eyebrows. What do you do with a brow lift?
Like the lid kind of gets heavy.
Yeah.
My mom and Nana.
Yeah, I'll show you guys.
My Nana's had 2.
I'll show you before and after. I mean, it's they go in through your scalp at your hairline, 2 tiny incisions. So they use an endoscope, and they just lift from there. And nobody really noticed that I did anything. Just my eyes looked a little bit brighter and more awake. And so that was a big one. I'm not encouraging anyone to go get a brow lift, especially now. It's like so out of control.
Right.
And sometimes I wonder, I mean, just the surgery on young people and like the before and afters of, you know, Bella Hadid and Kendall and Haley and all these people. And I'm sure like 18-year-olds are wanting to get surgery and are getting surgery. I know plastic surgeons who have so many young people that come in wanting to look like their filter and wanting to look like these girls. And they're like, no, but not everyone is ethical. So I never want to sound like I'm encouraging it, but I wanted to talk about it because there was nobody else talking about it. And I didn't know. I spent so much money getting Botox and getting filler, and I got threads, which are horrible. Don't do them. And all these different things when, you know, I could have just gone and had that procedure and called it a day. But aside from that, you know, just like the basics, SPF, drinking a lot of water, 8 hours of sleep, a healthy diet, you know, whatever that looks like for you. I don't like to be the food police. And I think just being fulfilled, you know, it's like happy people, fulfilled people are the most beautiful. It's so cliche, but I talk to a lot of plastic surgeons and doctors on my show too. And they're like, you can come in, I can do everything with my needle and I can give you surgery. And if you're not happy and you don't have that joy within, you're not going to like what you see. And, you know, you can tell when you look at somebody too. I don't know. I feel like people just kind of emit a different kind of energy.
100%.
So, and then I like Clear and Brilliant. And
oh
Botox.
yeah, I did that. I did Clear and Brilliant in New York like 6 years ago, and I liked it, but I don't know.
I think if you have downtime, go for the Fraxel.
Yes.
Clear and Brilliant is like a baby Fraxel.
Yep.
I'm doing one in a few weeks. I did like 3 consecutive Clear and Brilliants, like 3 weeks in a row.
Really?
And you have to do a bunch, I think, to get like a lasting
What is it?
It's a laser. So they numb your face. It's a laser.
Okay.
It's like a resurfacing.
Yeah. I don't know exactly how it works, but yeah, I mean,
Just
it
like
does
blast
it
your
does,
face off.
I'm like,
cool.
They all do just blast your
I
face
think I have
off
some
and
time
start
in May.
over.
Yeah. Well, the nice thing with Clear and Brilliant is like there isn't really downtime. Your face feels like sandpaper for a few days, but you really do look like clear and brilliant.
It is, I guess.
I'm looking at Tommy over there, and I'm
fine
like, this is
lines.
amazing.
I guess fine lines, sunspots. It's helpful for
Cool.
Yeah. It really just helps.
overall clarity.
Overall clarity.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know exactly.
Yeah, I
What's
remember
up?
when I got it. I didn't need it at all when I got it. And I was like, whatever. Let's do this. Honestly, you know what? I was in New York City. I got on Groupon.
Oh, Groupon!
I got on Groupon, baby. I was like, yeah, let's do this thing. And then who knows? I haven't got
the things I did with Groupon.
Oh, I know, honestly. I did laser treatment with Groupon in New York City.
Oh my God.
Tapas for 2.
Tapas for 2. Yeah. Yeah, last question for me. What's your morning routine like? I know this is kind of like basic, but I actually am interested in your morning routine specifically.
So I wake up usually around 6:30 and
Naturally?
Yes, unfortunately. If I could sleep until like
Does
8
your
or
puppy
9,
wake you up?
No, he can sleep until like 11 or 12. And
Oh.
we have to like drag him downstairs. We're like, at least come down and go to the bathroom and then go back to sleep. He is funny. I naturally wake up then and I'm like, if I could have any superpower, it would be the power to sleep in a little bit. It would make things so much easier. But I get up, I make my matcha, of course, and then I
Do you put like collagen in it or anything?
I go back and forth.
Okay.
Sometimes I do. Again, I kind of listen to what my body needs, like if I feel like I need a little extra something. But I usually do matcha with like a macadamia nut milk and a little bit of maple syrup. And then I will do some journaling. I'll write a gratitude list, just 5 things I'm grateful for. I just recently started writing 5 things that make me happy also, because I was like, gratitude and happiness are kind of different. And it made me look at my days and how I'm spending my time a little bit differently. Like, am I aligned with what makes me happy, or am I just like chasing, the grind and all of that? So I'll do
that. That's smart.
So I'll do that. And then I have this $25 planner that I just got on Amazon, nothing fancy, but I write down everything that I have to do during the day. I always wake up with ideas and things that I remember that I have to do and people that I have to get back to. And I'm not really a digital person. I like to write it in my planner. So I'll do that and just get it out of my head, because if I try to meditate with that stuff in my head, I'm like opening my eyes every 2 seconds to like write it in my phone or whatever. So I'll do that. I do some readings. I like to read Daily Stoic. I read a lot of Emmett Fox. What else am I reading right now? Just whatever my morning books are that I have on rotation. Then I meditate 20 minutes and, pray, then meditate. Then I do a workout, like a 30-minute workout, and then that's it. Then I go shower and I start my day.
And your workouts are?
Right now, this is not an ad, but I'm doing Obey Fitness.
I knew you were going to say Obey.
Really?
I've been like thinking about trying that.
What is it?
It is amazing. I was just getting so bored with all the workouts that I was doing. And, I like to do mostly low impact things like Pilates, and I'll go for walks. But sometimes I have more energy and I'll do like a HIIT. But I was doing BBG and I just felt like I was doing the same thing for years. And Obey it's a platform. They have over 5,000 on-demand workouts, but they also have live workouts every day. And you can do everything from like Pilates to yoga sculpt to dance to high intensity strength training. I mean, everything. Sculpt. And they have classes that are like 10 minutes. They have 28 minutes, which is what I usually do. They have 45 minutes. I mean, there's just so much variety. And you guys would appreciate this because it's in a very like brightly lit kind of like neon cool aesthetic studio.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
Very upbeat.
Super pretty.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They did actually give me a code that I put on Instagram, so I guess it was kind of an ad initially, but I've been doing it all year, and it's like I wake up excited to work out because I can just go pick anything.
Wow.
And there's so much variety. Some days I'll just do like 10 minutes. Other days I'll do like a 10-minute HIIT, then do 28-minute yoga, and get kind of like the heart rate going and that sculpting. So I've been really liking that, obviously.
I love that.
Love it.
That's amazing.
This has been so fun.
So fun.
I'm
wow,
really, really grateful you came.
Thank you so much for having me.
And I'm
What a
happy we
joy.
met, and I can't believe that you took my soul cycle class.
It's
I
crazy.
know.
I love the small world.
That is, I love that.
What is, just to close out, what is one thing you would say to your early 20s self, being in your 30s now?
Well, a lot of people ask me this, and I'm like, well, I would start by telling her to like put down the blow. Like, let's lay off that, sister. Like, not a
Yes.
good
You hear that,
look.
guys?
Yes.
But
It's
I
advice
think,
for life.
yeah. But I think I would tell myself that like it's okay to be who you are. I didn't want people to know that I had insecurities, and I didn't want people to know that I felt confused and I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And so back to what we talked about earlier, I put up these facades and I was living so inauthentically, and that disconnect really fuels just self-destructive behavior. So I would go back and tell myself, like, just be you.
Yeah.
Love that.
Thank you.
Amazing. All right, guys.
Thank you.
We'll see you later.